Everyone's in. So hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I'm glad that you were all able to join us tonight. Our speaker today, Rhonda Brown, has prepared an interactive session to introduce us to Padlet. Whether you're in a virtual classroom, whether you're face-to-face, there's a Padlet for you. So personally, I've never really heard of Padlet, so I'm excited to learn tonight. But I'll go ahead and hand it over to Rhonda because I know she has a really exciting presentation planned for us.
Hi, so I hail to you from not so sunny Florida right now because it's 8 o'clock at night here, but we've got a lot of stuff jammed into an hour, and depending on questions, we'll get as much in as we possibly can. So I am going to share my screen. And get started. Can everybody see the right screen?
Yeah.
Okay, because it again, it showed up really wonky on mine. As usual, it never goes according to plan. But this particular webinar, I'm going to try to get in more than 10 creative ways to use Padlet, but we're going to get at least 10 in. So away we go. Zoom norms, most of you are familiar with Zoom. Just know that I know some of you have internet issues and it's not always possible to keep your cameras on, but if it is, I would appreciate it because that way it allows me to kind of see some facial expressions and know whether or not I'm losing my audience, whether I need to slow down, speed up, whatever. Microphone's muted. I don't know exactly how many people that we have on here, but I think we have a pretty good size group. And Jessica is going to be monitoring the chat for any questions that you have. So be sure and just put them in there and we'll stop periodically. So, or she can stop me if it's something that needs to be addressed right at that particular time. So if you haven't already opened your chat, that probably is a really good idea. I lost mine just a second ago, so we'll see if I can get mine back. And then if you would, please rename yourself in the box so that I know what grade level you teach or the subject area that you teach, or if you're a student, what your focus is on. Also know that I'm using a dual screen. So if I'm looking away, I'm not shopping on Amazon. I'm actually looking at my other screen, which is where I have everything preloaded so that we don't waste so much time looking for everything. So are there any questions before we get started?
Rhonda, the participants are saying they don't have access to rename themselves. I'm trying to see if I have access as co-host to do that.
When you name yourself, if you hover over your picture, and you'll see the 3 little dots beside your picture. When you click on those 3 dots, on mine, it's the 3rd one down. It says mute, stop video, and then the next one down is rename. And when you click rename, it will allow you to type in something else. So you keep your whatever you want to be called, whether you want to be called Mr. Cole or Joshua or Josh, you know, you could put that in there. And I'm picking on him because he's the first one I saw. So just keep that name in there, and then if you want to put a subject or grade level, that just helps me to personalize it so that I'm not giving you all these high school examples and 95% of you are elementary or vice versa. I tried to do a mix of subject areas for my examples and a mix of grade levels for my examples so that I hit everybody, but I can certainly give you verbally more examples as we go along. Okay, any other questions? All right, so our agenda, and I may or may not go in this particular order. We are going to build a Padlet, and I've been toying back and forth between doing that at the beginning or at the end, and I probably will do it at the beginning just to show you how to put together one, and then we'll go into all the different types and how to share the Padlets. And in the end, I will give you some information about Padlet, how you can get an account. The accounts are free, but they vary in the type of Padlets you can build. And then we'll end with some question and answer. And if we're going towards the very end and you still have questions, I will hang around and answer your questions if you like. So here's our essential question. I'm just going to let you read that. and wouldn't be complete without some objectives. And I'm hoping that we get to all 3 of these tonight. Okay, so you can ignore this for just a second. I'm going to have Jessica put our first link in the chat, and I'll let you know when to click on that. Some of you, because of the device that you're on the Zoom meeting in, may not be able to open a second window. And for those of you, you would probably prefer to use maybe your cell phone to do the interactive Padlets that we have. So you have a choice. Once Jessica puts the link in the chat, you can click on it and it will open in a separate window, or you can use the QR code and open it like on a phone or an iPad instead of your computer. So Jessica, if you would go ahead and put that in the chat.
Yep, I just added it on there.
Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing this screen and go to my Padlet screen. So all of you should see this, and this is called a timeline, and it is one of the types or formats of Padlet. Obviously, you can use a timeline for dates and putting things in sequence in time order, but I thought this would be a fun way to introduce everybody and to find out just what your comfort level is with Padlet. So you'll notice that I have what is Padlet, and that's a 0. That you don't even, maybe never even heard of Padlet before. And then there's a 10, move over, I could teach this. And you'll see that there's a plus sign right here in the middle. Can everybody see me kind of circling that?
So we
No?
actually can't see your screen right now.
Okay, so let me, maybe I did not share that properly. Sometimes a double screen is a hindrance too, because I had it up. Okay, can you all see it now? Wonderful. Okay, so 0 if you don't know what Padlet is, or you just really have only heard of it and don't know what it is or what you do with it. And a 10 if you know so much about it that you could tell me to go away and you could finish teaching it. And you'll see that right here in between, there is a plus sign. So most of you are going to be somewhere in that continuum. Somebody already put in there that they're a 1, and that's great. If you want to put your picture in there, that's why I did that. There is actually a way that you can insert your picture. So when you click on this, you see these tools right here. There's a camera. You can take a picture of yourself right where you sit, and that would add it. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I would like for everybody to put where you feel like you fit on here. We have a negative number. Okay, so nice. So most everybody on here, from what I'm seeing on here, somewhere less than 5. So not really comfortable with it. Some have never heard of it, and that's awesome. Okay, so we're in the right place. This would be great for you to use with your students. Looks like everybody was able to put something on there. If you wanted to know what prior knowledge was, you could ask a question and have them put something on the timeline. One of the things that I used it for back many years ago, we were doing a debate and some research, and we had a continuum on the board, which now we could do on a timeline on Padlet, and it's where do you fit in agreement with this statement? And some would put it all the way at one end, I totally disagree with this. Then you'd have students who, I totally agree with this. And then you'd have a lot of people somewhere along the line. And then we saved that. And after we did all of our research and our debate, we went back and put on there again to see where people moved. And it was really interesting because you could see where people had almost swapped sides depending on what they found. So timeline, even though it sounds like you would just use it in chronological order, and we're going to see some other ways we can use it, it does not have to be anything related to time at all. So I'm going to stay in Padlet for a while, and I hope my screen changed for all of you and you see where it says for me to remember to eat my veggies. Whoever it is who created Padlet, you never know what your little message is going to be when you open Padlet on any given day. Some days it's about eating your vegetables, and sometimes it's make sure you get outside and get some sunshine. You never know what it's going to be. So I think I am going to just show you how you can make a very simple Padlet. And then we'll go into all the different kinds and how to use them. So obviously the first thing you do is just click on Make a Padlet. It is very user-friendly. The thing that threw me at first was, how do I decide which one of these formats? Because they're all going to be blank, or they say they're blank, but I'll show you that's not really the case. How do you know whether to use a wall or a shelf or a grid? Because they all look very similar, but there are some very subtle differences, and you would not want to use a wall if a grid would work better, and maybe you have projects that the students are working on. The wall may not be the appropriate one. You might want to use either the shelf or the grid. And so we're going to go over all of those subtle differences. For what I'm going to do right now, I think I'm just going to use Canvas, because when I first started and I didn't really know what I was doing, this one was the easiest one for me because I could rearrange everything the way I wanted it. Now I know that sometimes having to rearrange all the time is less productive. And so I don't use Canvas a lot, but for tonight, I think that would be the best one. So this one has a funny name. It always says something. It gives you a name. This one says My Sublime Padlet. So I'm going to put that this is our practice one. And it's just very easy to put a new title in. And you can change the title at any time. So maybe you want to put first period, or maybe you want to put algebra, whatever you want to name it. And then underneath it, it can be a description. It could be a class. It could be a question, like our timeline was. That's where I put it. I had the title I put in there was Timeline Introduction Question. And then for description, I put the question, how familiar are you with Padlet? So you could start off any class with that, or it could just simply be, third grade math class. It doesn't have to be anything. So we're going to put, let's see, UC on there so that I know when I made it. And then you scroll down, you can add an icon. Where the icon would go is up there next to your name. So sometimes I will change that icon and put a little apple there. It's so small on my screen, I can't even see what it is right now. But that's something that you can play around with at your leisure. And then wallpaper, that's the background of it. This one automatically opened with, it almost looks like a blue graph paper. You never know what it's going to open with. So when it says blank, it's blank in that it doesn't have anything posted on it, but the background is always there. Now, for me, I like either very subtle or no background at all when I'm building my Padlet, because if I put a big flashy background on there, and I'm going to show you some of them, to me, it's just like, I can't concentrate on it if it's there. Kids tend to like all that noise in the background. But then you've got these other students, special ed students, perhaps, that can't concentrate with all that distraction. They would want something either very subtle or no background at all. And so on the wallpaper, when you click on it, you have choices, solid colors, but the colors, here's the white one, or actually it's a kind of a pale gray, but you can use other colors, and you can see that some of them are very bright. And if I put something like that on there, it would make me blind. I couldn't handle it. So I would tend to go with that pale gray. Or you can put gradients. Now, the thing about the gradients, other than the gray one, and that you can see there's really not much of a difference. It might show different on some computers. On mine, it shows almost no difference at all. But if you had the purple, you can see that it's lighter in the middle and goes out. Again, could be a distraction for some students and maybe not for others. I tend to use most of the time the textures and patterns. And this one came up, here's the blueprint, they call it, with it that it originally had on there. I like corkboard, I like the bricks. Depending on what I'm doing, I might use the pencils, but you know, you just kind of have to play around with it. The camouflage one, to me, is too busy, but that's always just a personal preference. So you just play around with the backgrounds and see what you tend to like. And then you can always add pictures. You can add your own pictures. One of them that I built, I'm going to show you that I did use one of my own pictures for that. Kids tend to like, you know, the donuts. They tend to like busy things, the tulips maybe, but again, personal preference. So we're just going to leave the cork board up here because that was the last one I picked, and hit next. And then you're ready to start posting. Depending on the style that you use, there may be this little pink circle with a plus in it. When you click on it, it will open up into a box, and then you can type on it. And you know, if you had students, you would have them type their name and then maybe a comment underneath. If I could type today. And then post it. And then you could have other students right underneath it, or they could, I'm just going to put some stuff in here so that it will register. These on Canvas you can move around. So this one would be a really good one if you wanted students to respond to each other. Somebody makes a comment about maybe the question that you have at the top or a picture that you have posted, and students can then respond to it, and then they can drag it and put it underneath so that you know who they're responding to. And that really is all there is to it. I'm going to put a couple more on here. Notice too that you don't always have to go over to the pink. You can just double click in here and it will give you some boxes. If I can type on them, there we go. And then you can drag them around wherever you want. You're not locked into the canvas. If you change your mind at some point and decide that that's not what you want, you can go up here to this, like the settings icon that looks like the little gear, and you can change it. And if you scroll all the way down, actually, because I haven't saved it, it's not letting me do that. Let's go over here. I can do it from this screen with the three little dots. You can change the format. We're going to do that with one of them tonight, so you can see one that's already populated, what happens to all of the postings when you change the format. Some of them, it really messes them up and you can't do that. Others, it doesn't do much to it at all, and you can just change it at will. So you're not really locked in to the format that you're using. However, once you get more familiar with Padlet, you will probably want to plan out your format before you start, just in case, because if you go from, let's say, the one called back channel up to grid, it's going to mess it up, and you don't want to have to do that. Okay, you'll notice that there was a help button. I should have shown you that right here, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, what you find with the help button and the information button as well. So if there are no questions, I'm going to go show you a couple more.
We have one question, Rhonda. It says, is Padlet always anonymous with like the timeline link we used, or is there a way to remove so basically, can people add their name or require for individuals to use their name?
Well, the only way anybody could get onto this Padlet was if they had the link. So I'm not going to give that to anybody I don't know. And that could be one of the stipulations when you're in class, is that the students or the teachers, if you're doing like a faculty meeting or whatever, have to put their name. And you have to also, like, I remember I was in a 5th grade class with a teacher one time, and it was the first time she had used Padlet. And she said, oh, this is an honors class. I don't have to worry about that. Well, second period, we changed all that because she did have to worry about that. Students were putting inappropriate names and they were putting inappropriate comments. And so there are some settings in there, but that's not foolproof with Padlet. So know your audience, know your students if you're working with kids, and they have to type where it came up anonymous. Since it's my account that you were all in, it came up anonymous. If you were in your account, your name would be there, because you notice I didn't type my name on, well, I guess I did on that one. But if I were logged in and typing on it, if I were logged into it on another device, it would show my name. So just require that they put their names on there. Does that answer the question? Yes, no?
I believe so.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And you'll see that there are some nuances, and they changed Padlet a lot. When I first started using it, there were, I believe, 3 formats. Now there are 8. As a matter of fact, 2 of the ones I had never used until I started setting this all up. It's like, oh, that's new. So there is a possibility that they will change things, and I think they probably get input from teachers and other users as they go along. So let's go back, and I'm going to show you one called back channel. This particular one is kind of like a thread of a conversation. And what you'll notice is I populated this myself. So I had a conversation with myself about what I was binging over the pandemic and so many things. So I just had a conversation of some of the ones that I liked and some that I was like, okay with, and I just added pictures. But what you'll notice is that even though they're the same width, they're not all the same size on this one. And here, because there was very little on there, it didn't even make it the same width. The bigger, the one up above it, that's, if you're familiar with it, the expanse, the 2 people that are in there, they'll all be that width if there's a lot on that post. But if the post is really small, because I wrote the expanse, what channel, there's not enough to fill in that box. So it's smaller, and it looks more like you would see almost in text messages. Now, you can't rearrange these. I tried. And maybe I wasn't holding my head right when I did it, but most of the time they're just going to be in order as people populate them. So this would be a good one if you want people to answer a question. Now, the feature that I really like best about this one, do you see where at the bottom it says say something and it tells you to post? Sometimes if you have a question or you want some information from a group of people, doesn't even have to be students, everybody waits and reads what other people are posting before they add what they put, because they don't want to feel silly, or they're afraid that what they think is wrong, even when there's no wrong or right answer. What I like about this one is you can have everybody type their answer in there, and then you can do a countdown and say, okay, on 3, I want everybody to hit post. And then it'll populate, not necessarily in any particular order. And then you can go back and read all the threads, and nobody was influenced by anything else that somebody else said. So you get really honest feedback from the participants, whether it's a faculty meeting with teachers, whether it's a group of students, or whether it's your colleagues that are planning, what lesson do you want to do next? And you don't want, oh yeah, that's okay with me. Really, what do you want to do next? And so having it all populate at the same time, it's kind of like in the chat in Zoom. You can have everybody type it, but not hit, and I've forgotten what it says, submit or post until everybody does it all at the same time, and then they start populating. And it's kind of fun to read that way. So this one is back channel. This one is very similar to stream, but I'm going to switch this one to stream, and I want you to see, actually, let me scroll down because this is where you're going to notice it. I'm going to scroll over and change my format to stream, which you notice is stacked. and see what happens. Now you see that everything, and this reversed the order when I did it too. And I don't know why. That's kind of an idiosyncrasy with Padlet. You can see that now they're all exactly the same width. It doesn't matter how little or how much is written in the box. They're all the same width. So that one that was really small in the back channel is not small on the stream. I don't know if there would be one time you would prefer this over another, but there might be. So that's really the only difference between those two that I have been able to see. And let me go back to it. If you switch it back, it goes back to the way it was. So it's in the back, in the right order again. Okay. Any questions about back channel? All right, and if I could get...
I do have a question.
Okay, great.
I looked away.
Oh.
I was taking notes when you switched from the text boxes, the submissions on the right side, and then it was like center to the middle. I kind of missed what you clicked on.
Oh, okay. So let me go back to it. I was in my back channel. That's the name of the format. And what I did is, you see these 3 dots up here? If you click on those 3 dots, I changed the format. And I changed it from back channel to stream. They're very similar. There are a couple of them that are similar, but have subtle differences. And so I just wanted you to see the difference. If I would go to stream, see where it says the expanse what channel, and it's narrower, it's smaller, it would be the same width and it would be more centered. And I don't know why it's centered on one and not the other. That's just the way it's set up. But that's really the only difference between the two. So then that's how I did it, just with the little 3 dots over here. Okay, so Jessica, if you could put the link for Landslide into the chat, and if you would prefer to open it with the QR code, there's the QR code for it. Or you can use the link, which will just open it into a different tab on your computer. And I'll leave this up for a second before I go to it.
Yeah, the link is on the chat now, if anyone wants to use that.
Yeah. Some people prefer the QR codes because they can do it on their phones and keep their computer open. And other people prefer the links because they can open it and flip back and forth. So... is there anybody at all who needs more time so I can switch to the other one? Okay, so I'm going to switch to this particular screen, and this one is called, this is Stream. And in this particular, oh, somebody's already doing it. You want to, in 6 words, describe what you see happening in this image. And remember, it's 6 words, not 4, not 5, not 7, not 8, but 6. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes. So go ahead and keep on typing if you're still thinking and working. This is a really good one to use with students who don't like to write. If they have to summarize or explain something in 6 words, they have to be really, really careful in how they choose their 6 words. And you can make it into, it has to be a sentence, or it could just be 6 adjectives or descriptive words, or just a phrase. That's strictly up to you how you use it. But by using 6 words, they have to be very careful. Kids who like to write a lot struggle the most with this. The students who really work well with the 6 words are the ones who hate writing and think, oh, well, I can do 6 words. And I was in a special ed class one time and had the students summarize amino acid, I believe was what the term was what was an amino acid, and they had to summarize it in 6 words. And the best one came from a special ed student. And I didn't know that at the time because I didn't know these students. It was someone else's classroom. And I went over to him and I said, "This is fabulous." And I read it to the whole class, and I found out later. And after that, he started participating more in the class because he figured out that he had something worthwhile to share. And so this has been a very powerful tool. This, just the 6 words is all you have to do. So
Rhonda, there's just a quick question of someone asking if how do they type, if you could demonstrate that for them.
Oh, sure. It's the little pink circle with the square, or with the plus in it. When you hover over it, it becomes a pencil. And when you click on it, you should have a box open up that you can type in. Most of them, it's the pink circle, but not all. So we have a lot of really good ones. We have gravitational force pulls houses down mountain. 4 houses in grave danger falling. Hill with grass, houses, and trees. So you can see that you get a lot of perspectives on this. This one's a really good one, not this particular picture, but any picture that has a lot going on in it, especially subtleties, to see how much attention to detail students will be paying. For instance, you will notice that right over here, that fence is hovering right over an area that has no ground underneath it. It's already given way. And over here, the fence has already fallen, as well as it looks like part of another structure. At first glance, you don't really notice those things. And so you can use it for detail, and then you can have the students write about it. You can also use this particular strategy for having the students create maybe a haiku or to help with a math problem, or you can post a video here and have them watch the video. And you can use any type of an educational strategy along with it that would be appropriate. And it just kind of gets them to focus. It's also great, it's also great to find out what their misconceptions are. So you can tell them, what do you think about this? Or put a statement there. Do you think it's true or false, and why? And you kind of give some weight to those misconceptions. Like when I taught biology, I was appalled at the number of students who thought their blood inside their body was blue, and how many didn't know that it's actually still red inside. And so finding out those misconceptions is really helpful sometimes in planning around your lessons.
Rhonda, there's a
Yes.
question on the chat. Is there a way to delete a student's comment, for example, if they were inappropriate?
I think there's a setting in here, and I didn't go to that, where you can see the post before it's posted, or you don't necessarily. I guess you could block certain students. There was a big discussion around that a couple of years ago, and I never did go back and see how they resolved it. What I told my teachers, and what I'm going to tell you in case there is one on here, is that you walk around and you see what the students are doing, and monitor them, and have the students monitor each other. Will you get some? Maybe, but there's also a filter on there where you can filter out certain words. That I do know is there. So middle school is the worst. Elementary, maybe upper elementary, you would get some of that. Lower elementary, usually not. High school, it's a mixed bag. It depends on the type of classes that you're teaching, but middle schoolers will always try to push the envelope as far as they possibly can. And then they act surprised when they get in trouble. But play around with the settings that are in there. And if we have time, we can go and look and see what settings have changed in the past year or so. But I do know that that was a conversation that they were having. So let's go. I know that time is just going by really quickly. I want to give you a chance to see just a few. This one is called The Wall. And this one we actually did in a 3rd grade class in Alabama. and I had the students were reading The Three Little Pigs, and we turned it into a STEM lesson. So they had a construction project, and they compared and contrasted the video with the book. And so these are actually live links on here. So a student could click on the link for the book and read it. They could click on the link and watch the video. The construction project is there. And the only thing that I don't have on here is a rubric, and that could be added very quickly. What you'll notice with this is that they are all in a line, but this one's butted right up against the bottom one because that's the shortest one. So they don't necessarily, they will line up in columns, but not in rows across. Where the grid, and I'm going to show you that one next, the grid one actually will do that. So here's grid, looks just like the wall, except that it also will put them in rows too. So this one I turned into a math problem, and you can give each group or pair a problem to work, and they would have to write a word problem to go with the math problem, work it out. And this is just a picture that I uploaded. I did the problem and uploaded it. Same thing with this one. And so you end up with keeping everything that belongs to one group together in that same row across, where if I changed that to the wall, they would be all mixed together and you wouldn't be able to tell whose was whose. So in that case, the grid is the best format for this particular type of a Padlet. So I did go ahead. I don't know whether we're going to have time. I'll go back to it if we do. This is one of them that's the shelf. And this one is all the way in rows, or in columns rather, but the columns move. So my daughter was actually working in a class. She was taking organic chemistry. And I created this for her to help her study for the organic molecules. And it's hard to see. And this afternoon, this was white right here. Whoops. There is well, let's go over here. It's, for some reason, it's turned gray, and it's blending in with my background. When I made it, it was white. So if I change the background, let me change the background to just take it off. Oops, save and close. So if I change the background, now you can see that it has distinct, I forget what you call that little thing, that little bar down at the bottom that you can scroll. But you have to be careful not to use it. When you're using a touchpad, get both hands on there at the same time, it does funky things. So this is just a way that you can keep adding. And if you wanted to add another box that maybe, I can't even think right now of something else you would want to add to that. Maybe some specific, where I've got in the lipids, for instance, oils, waxes, hormones, and certain vitamins, maybe you'd want specific names. So you could add a box here and put, you know, specific molecules. You can also take boxes out. If you decide that you don't want them to have to put the examples in there, you can change that by just deleting it with the little trash can, just like you do on any other computer. And then you can add another column, although this is organic molecules. I can't think of anything else that you would add. But you can have multiple columns there. I had 13 teachers in one school, and so I created a Padlet like this, and the column names were the teachers' names. And so I had all the teachers' names. My first column at the front was actually the bell schedule and things that were pertaining to that particular school. So, you know, if you're like Melissa, I know you work with a lot of teachers, so you could create a Padlet like this where you would have specifics for those teachers. And if you had to document like some artifacts, pictures in their classroom or lesson plans, this would be a good way to put that in there, especially if you wanted everybody else who had access to this Padlet to be able to see them, or just for your own information. So when I had to do that and keep the artifacts, we had to share it with the manager of the company that I was working with. And the teachers didn't necessarily see that, although I would show that to them when they wanted to see it. It really was for me and for my bosses to see what they were doing. But there's just multiple ways that you can use this particular style of Padlet. And you even got to see how I changed the background that was already there. So we have time, I think, for 2 more to do the interactive. So if Jessica could put in the link. Is anybody using the QR code? If you are, just come off mute or tell Jessica in the chat that you're using it and I'll put it up.
Rhonda, is this the shelf one?
Okay, the shelf one, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
Is
put it.
anybody using the QR code?
It doesn't look like it, no.
Okay, so then I'll just won't waste time doing that. So this one, a shelf, just like I had with the organic molecules, but in this case, I'm using it as a KWL. What I want to know, what I know, what I want to know, and what I learned after you've done some research or some reading. And this one is interactive. So what would you guys all like to talk about? You know, I had insects in there and was going to use it for a 3rd grade class, but maybe we could even put in there what you know or what you talked about Padlet. We could even do something about Padlet. So what do you already know about Padlet right now? What more do you still want to know? And maybe that would help me curate some answers that I could send to Jessica and she could send it out later. Or if you have the same particular, if you keep this link, you could go back to it later and I could fill that in for you.
Yeah, I could send it out to the participants afterwards in an email with the follow-up
Okay.
tomorrow.
So yeah, what do they want to know? And then some of the things that maybe they've already learned. So somebody did ask about adding videos, and yes, you can add videos. Where I added my picture on that very first one, and remember the big bad wolf one? That was actually a link to a video, but you can upload the videos too. Sometimes they don't work very well, so I tend to always put instead the link to the video. That seems to work a little better. And I guess it probably depends on the video, but I struggle sometimes with the videos, and they would be there and then the next time I would try to use it and it wouldn't open. So the link usually works better. That's just my workaround and my preference. You might be able to figure out, maybe you're more tech savvy than I am, which probably wouldn't be a stretch. So you would be able to do that. Yes, it can be used asynchronously. That's why you can use it in a class, face-to-face, online like we're doing, but you can also just send out the link and students can go and, like, you could put an entire assignment on here with videos, just like the 3 little pigs. That could be an entire assignment that students could actually do at home. And so they could access that at any time. They just have to do all those different parts. And of course, you would add a rubric to it too, so that they would know what they were graded on. But yeah, most of these can be used either face-to-face or virtual, and they can be used in synchronous classrooms or asynchronous. So you can also make like copy one, have it very similar, and just tweak some things to amp it up for the students who need more of a challenge. But you can also, and I always hate to hear people say, yeah, I can dumb it down, because I don't mean that, modify it to meet the needs of students who either struggle with the language or they have a learning disability. Maybe they have a lower reading level. And so if you had reading passages that you wanted, you could have 2 different reading passages, and you could assign one that was a little bit harder to the group of advanced students, and then another one that the struggling readers would read. Or it could even be a video that they would be on the same subject, and then you could have them talk to one another. They would never even have to know that the reason they got 2 different things was because one group wasn't capable of doing this one, and this one would have been too easy for that group. Instead, it's like we're doing two different things so that we can share to each other and talk about the similarities and differences. And it's a really clever way of differentiating without them knowing that you're differentiating. And it works really well. It works really well with teachers too in different subject areas. Somebody will say, well, you know, I teach high school, so this doesn't apply to me. Or I teach elementary, so that doesn't apply to me. But so you can give them a task and show how it really works with both groups by having, you know, maybe something on photosynthesis that the high school teachers are reading and something about plants that the elementary teachers are reading. And then you have them talk to each other and find out that they're really learning about some of the same things. And so it's the same way in the classroom. So I will go back because we're running out of time and look at all of these, and I will answer these and send them to Jessica sometime tomorrow. I'm going to get my first COVID shot tomorrow morning, so however long that takes, when I come home in the afternoon, I will answer all of these questions and get them to her so that she can send them out. I do know the one with the student accounts. Students don't need an account. Nobody needs an account if you are just sending a link to them to go to a Padlet. However, they do need an account, which is free, if they're going to create their own Padlets for an assignment. So I will look at this. It looks like I've got a lot of stuff in here that I can work with and send lots of answers. All right, so I want to show you the two new ones. I've skipped this one. This one was actually my favorite and the most fun to make because somebody told me, what? You've never seen Lord of the Rings? No, I didn't. I'd never seen that until just last week. I watched all of them. So I created a character analysis. So for reading, you could use Canvas and create like a fake Facebook profile to do a character analysis. So if you're reading a novel and you want the students to do a character analysis on a specific character, they could do it in a fun way using Padlet to create fake book. And so they can upload pictures from the internet. They can look at, okay, so who in the book would you be friends with? Who would be your enemies? What kinds of things would you post on the timeline? So I just quickly put some things on here with the conversation that maybe this is how it would go. If they were using social media, what would Frodo say? You might, oh my God, I can't believe this. They're following us and chasing us. And then a long time goes by and says, wow, they've been kidnapped and what am I going to do? And where is, you know, Gandalf? So the kids could have a fun way of talking about the novel that they're reading and doing the analysis of a particular character and not even realizing that they're doing a language arts assignment because they're playing around. And it really was a lot of fun. So this is one way that you can get them to do some of the things that are traditional, but in a non-traditional way. And this very much could be done asynchronously at home for homework or just during the day. Okay, I want everybody to work on their character analysis now. And of course, they would end up having to have their own Padlet account for that, but they would be able to do that. So if I could get Jessica to go ahead and put in, oh, nope, don't do that yet. I haven't done this one, the map one. The map one obviously is going to be where you would put pins, different places on the map. And so the first thing that comes to mind would be social studies. And so I did just, which I can tell you right now, I'm really dumb when it comes to social studies because I was more in tune with math and science when I was in school. So I had to look all these up. Those of you who really are into history and social studies could have probably done this in a matter of seconds, and it took me about an hour because I had to do a lot of research. But you put these pins on the map, and then once they're here, you click on them and it tells you a little bit about it, which I typed in. So all these different pins are different places that were important during World War II. You can zero in on them and add more. So if I wanted to add another pin right here, I could at any time. And there's that little, I think that's it right up there. Yeah, so I can put another one on this map wherever I want to. And you'll notice that this one was at the top where you write on it, where most of them have been down in the right-hand corner. So you can keep adding wherever. you want to on the map, and I can't get rid of this. Let's see. Okay, let's put Cologne. I saw that on there. And then I could write something in there, and now I've got a pen. You can also take it off if you're like, oh, wait, that's not the right word. And you can take it off, and it will ask you, are you sure you want to take that one out? And you can then delete it.
Rhonda, someone asked a question. Was the
Sure.
pencil baggings just one student's work, or would each student have their own?
That's up to you. There really is no right or wrong way to use Padlet, and you're only limited by your own imagination or the imagination of your students on how to use it. When I was first playing around with the map, because I had never seen it before, this is one of the newer ones, I started off on it's like, okay, what can I do? And I just started playing around with all the different places I've lived and put a pin in all those different places so that I could kind of see, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And then I took those off, and then where do I want to go on my next vacations? You know, what's on my bucket list? And so I put pins on there, and then I thought nobody really cares what I did or where I lived or what my bucket list is. So I settled on World War II because it was just the first thing that came to mind. So you can give each student a particular battle, for instance, and then they would add everything that they can. This would be a really good thing to use at the beginning of the year, especially, I know California probably has a lot of kids who come in who are not native to California. In Florida, I always say nobody's from Florida, really. We all are transplants. And so I could do this in a classroom and have points all over the map of the United States from where my students had come from. In a class of 30, there might have been 3 that were actually born in Florida. Most of them came from someplace else. And so they could put this on, and it would just be like an icebreaker to see where everybody is from. And then they could talk about it. You could put this up, and they could put it on there in, if you're doing a Zoom, and they could talk about it to the rest of the class when they could just come off mute and do that. So there are lots of different ways that you can use the map when at first glance it seems like, when would I use map? But you really do. There are lots of different ways you can do it. So let me go back. It's not letting me do that. If you could, Jessica, go ahead and put in the last link for the, let's see, where is it? The flip-flop. Yes. I had a couple more that I was going to show, but this one is just a way, this is a good way to judge, did I really teach anybody anything? When I was in the classroom, I'd say, okay, has everybody got it? You know, at the end of a lesson that I thought was just fabulous. And they go, oh yeah. And on the way out the door, you'd hear them go, I didn't understand a word she said, did you? It's like, oh. So exit tickets, especially if, you know, it's on a piece of paper or in this case, anonymous, you used to think this about Padlet, but now I think this about Padlet. So this person put it in here because they didn't wait for me to say that, but that's okay. I used to think the blood inside of us is blue-ish, but now I think, and I'm sure it's going to say red. So it could have been that. What do you think about blood? In this particular instance, I want to know what you used to think about Padlet, or maybe you never thought about it because you didn't even know about it. And what do you think now? Do you think you could use it? Do you think it would be useful? Do you think I just wasted an hour of my time? And so, and you can see that everybody's populating. I used to think it was scary. It was scary at first. Ah. And I see somebody comparing it to Jamboard, and I've heard of Jamboard, and I actually even have a little sticky note on my computer to look at it. But somebody said, now I think it's more interesting. So now I've really got to go and look and see what Jamboard is all about, because I do hear about it every now and then. Ah, awesome. So good. I don't see anybody in there saying that they wasted their hour, so I'm glad about that. I do love Padlet. that to me, when I first started having to use the computer a lot for trainings, and they gave me a long list of all these things I needed to learn, Padlet to me was the most user-friendly and the most versatile for me. So given the option, this is my go-to platform, I guess is the right word for it. I really like Padlet the best of all of them. Okay, I think everybody has been able to post. I'm going to show you that you can remake your Padlets. I've never really done a remake because I want to keep the ones that I've got. But sharing, how did I get the links that I shared with you tonight? When you go to share, you can change the privacy. On this one, it says visitors can write. But if you don't want your students to write on it, maybe it's only an assignment board for asynchronous learning. You want them to do all these different things. They can't write on it. You can change the privacy right here to where it's down here. You can make it public if you want, but then you open yourself up to anybody who absolutely, just stumbles onto it, can find it. That they can write it or read only and then edit it. And editing would be like if Melissa, for instance, decided, well, that's a stupid question on your flip-flop, I'm going to change that. And she could go in and edit that without me knowing about it. So you wouldn't want to use edit unless you are collaborating with maybe a co-teacher, that the co-teacher might want to edit it. So with students, most of the time it's going to be can read or can write if you want them to post. So I'm going to change this one to read since everybody's on there now. And when you change it, it says, do you want to discard and close, or do you want to keep working? I'm just going to tell it I want to keep working. So let me just change it right there. So I didn't change anything, so it didn't ask me. But up here where you get the gear, this is where you can change the title and change all of the things about it, like the background, reactions, and some of the, if you put a picture on the background, it will allow you to blur it. If you remember, the organic molecules that I had before I took it off and just made it plain white was a blurred version of molecules. Because the other one, that's why I changed it to blur. The other one, you couldn't see the scrolling bar at all. And when I changed it to blur, it turned it white this afternoon, of course, and it was back to that gray and blended in with the background. So you would want to play around with it. And it doesn't allow you to do a gradation of blur, where it's just slightly blurred or very blurred. It's either blurred or it's clear. It's not one, you can't, it's not like a dimmer switch is what I'm trying to say. You can allow for comments. This, I think, might be where you can require approvable and filter for profanity. So here are the buttons for that. So they did add those. So if I wanted to do that and make sure that nobody put any potty words on there, that would be where I would do that. And then you would just save it and close. Over here on the three dots, we did do a little bit of that. I've got a screenshot I'm going to show you instead of going and opening these, but here's where you can do a lot of different things, and you can invite people if you know their email address. Like I knew the email address of my boss, so I could invite him to be able to see the Padlet instead of sending him the link. Usually I did both because he sometimes lost things, so I would do it both ways, and it would allow you to change all of those settings in there if you want. Somebody asked about videos, so let me just add right here. Do you see when I clicked on the little pink circle that was at the bottom, it allows you to upload files, to put a link in. You can search pictures, but the upload is where you can put videos. The only thing is you can't have it already on your computer, like download it onto your computer and then put it in there. You have to save it, but you can search for them this way and filter for videos. So if I wanted a video on the 3 little pigs, for instance, I could do that in any video that came up, and then I could embed that. And if I click on that, you'll see that it embedded that way. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And maybe it has to do with permissions or the size of the video. I really don't know. But that's how you embed a video very easily. So I am going to stop sharing this screen and go back to my other one so that I can show you just the last few things before we leave. Okay. All right, the additional information. I still haven't found a really easy way. Jessica and I were talking about that. The one thing on Zoom I wish they would allow you to do is to preload all the screens that you want to share and just click on them instead of having to unshare and share and change. But maybe next year. So just the additional information, when you click on those the three dots and you get the help button, this is where you can get news. So if they do any updates to Padlet where they add different permissions or different types of formats, this is where you would find it. They also have video tutorials that will give you even more information than what I gave you today. I haven't looked at any of them, but I have seen that they are there. So if you're looking for something specific, sometimes you can just Google, a question about Padlet and you'll find a video on YouTube for it as well. But this is where you would go to find all of that. So it will tell you a little bit about their terms of service, but I'm going to tell you just very quickly about that. You can create an account for free. The drawback is now you can only get 3 Padlets for free. And if you want a 4th one, then you have to upgrade. And the upgrade you can pay monthly, which is $10 a month, or you can pay for the year, which is $95 or $96 a year for that. And then you can have as many as you want. I have a lot, but mine are free because I'm grandfathered in from the back in the days before they actually started charging. What I have found is the workaround for teachers who don't have a lot of excess cash laying around to be able to have the unlimited and don't have maybe somebody who would be kind enough to gift it to them. Just do the 3 and continually modify them. I take some of the same Padlets and just change the names, take off all of the posts that are there, and there's just the click of the button that you can take and erase all the posts and start all over. And it's really not that difficult to do that. So unless you want to keep a bunch of Padlets, the 3 would probably be fine. If you have, a gift or a department that will get together and do like a school-wide Padlet subscription to everybody, then it's great to have a bunch of them, but you don't have to do it. It's certainly workable to just have the free account. And you just go to padlet.com. Once you've created your account, you can download the app and you can have the Padlet app on your phone or an iPad, or if you've got a MacBook that has apps, even my PC has apps. So you can certainly use the app as well. And you can change it on one and it will show up on the other. So it's really great to have that both. So I know I threw a lot at you in an hour. Does anybody have any particular questions, or are you still like processing? You can certainly send questions to Jessica or to Melissa. Melissa knows how to get hold of me. Actually, I could, let's see, stop showing, because this is actually the last slide. I'm going to stop and put my email in the chat. And if you want to send me a specific question later on, you can certainly do that. Okay, so that is my email, and you're certainly welcome to email me at any point and ask me a specific question, and I'll try to answer it. But truthfully, the best way to learn Padlet is to get in there and play around with it, and it's actually a lot of fun. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. And Melissa, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Rhonda, you're welcome. There are a couple of other questions in the chat.
Okay. So I'm certainly here to answer any questions that
Um,
anybody has.
Okay.
So,
So maybe if they just want to speak up, if their questions haven't been answered.
yeah, because there are so many things coming through, I might miss something. So required approval, that's a new button. And I'm not really sure what that would entail because I didn't need to use it for this one. Sometimes it is, I'm trying to think what it is. There's a platform that I use where nothing is posted until the teacher approves it. And that could be similar to that, but we could go in and play around with it if you want to after I answer all the other questions. Or I can just look at that and answer it and send it to Jessica, and she can send that out with the others.
With the videos that you were uploading, were you uploading from your computer or from the internet?
The one that I showed, the 3 little pigs one, that was from the internet. It goes straight to Google. And but I have uploaded ones that are on my computer too. So for instance, if you had students going out in a courtyard or the playground and taking pictures of types of soil, or in a math class, angles of buildings, and they could then upload their own video, they would be able to do that, but they'd have to save it to their device that they had Padlet open on first. It works better that way. But yeah, either way.
I have one question. On the last one that you were doing, the wall flip-flop thing, I noticed that when I typed in, my name came as anonymous. Is there a way to change it?
That's because you don't have an account. Once you have a Padlet account, and I say that because it used to be that way, then their names would pop up. But you can always, where it says anonymous, you can change that to put your name. Just like I had some people, if they wanted to, they could change their name in the session so that I would know what they taught, or for instance, grade level. You can change your name from anonymous. I did it when I came in from some other place that I didn't have Padlet loaded on. It came up anonymous, and I just typed my name. So you can certainly do that.
Because I was thinking of using it because we have to do like a micro teaching sort of thing at the end of our course. And I was maybe thinking of using that at the end. But then if they don't have the Padlet account,
They
then...
just type their name in.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Just have to type their names in. No big deal.
Thank you.
There's always a workaround. In education, you will find that there's always a workaround, with everything. Then the longer you're in education, the more you will realize that.
Just don't tell your principal.
Yeah. Somebody asked what I meant by 3 Padlets. Each one of those different examples that I showed you was a different Padlet. So when I went to my home screen that showed all the different Padlets, I think I had 13 of them on there. Each one of those is a Padlet. So you could get 3 different ones, but you can keep changing those 3. And you can archive them. I have probably another 10 archived, which means if I want to use them, I can unarchive them and remake them if I want. And I only archive them because I'm afraid Padlet will change their mind and take them away from me, but they won't take anything away from me if it's already built. So I'm just doing it for self-preservation by archiving it, but you have that option to archive. But if you only have 3, chances are you're just going to keep them all on your home page of Padlet. And so you could have 3 different kinds. So if you're an elementary teacher, you could have a Padlet for math, you could have a Padlet for language arts, and you could have a Padlet for science, for instance. And the students could, if they've got devices, they can go on and work in those Padlets. Or you can, if you're in person, you can put it on an overhead. If you're in Zoom, then you can share the screen. And so there are lots of ways you can use those Padlets and get away with just using 3. And you can modify them every day if you want. You could put a week's worth of lessons. The 3 Little Pigs was actually a 5-day unit. They wouldn't do all of that in one day. And maybe it would even, if they required longer to do the construction phase of it, because we added a budget in there, which was the math, that might take longer depending on the level of your students. And so it could actually be a 2-week period that you would use one Padlet. And they wouldn't be writing on it. They would just be looking at it and getting the information off of it.
Do they ever expire?
I've had my Padlet since 2015. So I've had it for 6 years. And all the ones that I had from the very beginning are still there. I did go through and change a bunch of them just this week because I thought I don't need pictures of teachers from 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I took those out. And actually those were the ones that I used to do the demos tonight. I just modified those for you guys. So no, they don't. Unless they change something, they don't expire. And if you create one on your computer and pull it up on your Padlet app on your phone, it's still there. It'll be there.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Are there any other questions? Did I miss? If I missed a question, please come off of mute and tell me.
I do have a question.
Sure.
So I am teaching online and I am teaching on Microsoft Teams. So while I'm teaching, just like what was modeled today, I put the link in and then the students work on it.
Yes.
So then what happens afterwards? Like, what do I do with that Padlet? Like you said, I can archive it, or can I put it somewhere where students can go back? So what I'm thinking is, if I post a word problem for physics and say, how would you, like what are the given information and whatnot, but I still want students to be able to see it for the next day or two so that they can, like, how do I do that? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, if you've got the link for them to use from somewhere, and just like the links that are in the chat today, you could go back if you were so inclined and save that chat so that you would have all those links and you could go back and look at these if they were still there. Some of them I'm going to change, obviously, but you could do that for your students and tell them save these links, or you could send them the links in an email or create a Google Doc for them that have the links on there, and they would be active as long as you had that Padlet there. So you can keep it there as long as you want. The problem would be if you needed, to change that Padlet for something else, and then it wouldn't be available. But a lot of teachers they've used one Padlet that's had a bunch of QR codes on it, and the QR codes would take them to other places, like to a video or to a study guide, or so it can be. There are just so many ways to use it. I mean, it's really and truly is limitless. If you can think it, then you can figure out a way to do it on Padlet. That's what I like about it. It's so versatile. With only 3 Padlets, you may run into problems if you're using it a lot of keeping it active for 3 or 4 days. But if you're only using it periodically, because students get bored with the same thing over and over again. And so you have to vary your lessons, and maybe you'll want to use Jamboard sometimes, and maybe you'll want to use Padlet a lot, and maybe you use something else other times. And sometimes you just have to do a straight up lecture. Here's what I'm going to teach you today, and then we're going to practice it later on using maybe a Padlet. You just kind of have to play around with it and see what works best for you in your situation, with you as your teaching style and your students. Somebody asked a question about the Bilbo Baggins one. That actually was not student work, although students have done those. When I'm trying to think of the novel, that it was a 4th or 5th grade. I don't remember the novel, but anyway, it was 4th or 5th grade, and we told the students that they were going to build a Facebook page, and it's like one of the kids says, "Oh, I'm not allowed to use Facebook," but it was actually Padlet, and they created character analysis. So each small group of students had a different character in the book, that they were studying, and they just kept a running profile of what would they post based on what's going on. And then at the end, they shared them with the rest of the class. And so, so I've seen it with as young as 4th grade doing that, and I've seen them using it in high school. This particular one I just created on my own because I wanted you to see how you could do a character analysis using Padlet. Any other questions? I don't see any more, but I may have missed them. So if you have one, please come off mute and ask. Oh, somebody said that was the best training I've attended. Thank you.